What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
And my name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive, and we are talking All Saints today. We got to celebrate All Saints Sunday here at the church this past Sunday, where we remember our loved ones, remember the great clouds of witnesses around us that have gone before us.
It's a great Sunday.
Have been a legacy and all that good stuff. And we're going to kind of dive deep into it today.
We will.
Thanks, Dave. Good input. Well, without further ado, let's go. Well, Dave, what was your weekend like? Did you have a good weekend? We always kind of start here.
Yeah, I did have a good weekend. For those of you who don't know, this comes out Wednesday or Thursday. We record this typically on a Monday, sometimes a Tuesday, and so we are fresh off the weekend.
That's right.
And I had a good weekend. My sister, who lives down in Florida, was up with her husband, Chris, and we got together twice with them, and my brother and sister-in-law, and Teresa, and then Anna and her husband, Alex, and Esther.
Nice.
And we celebrated 2 birthdays because we have 2 November birthdays, and just good catching up with her.
Yeah.
Don't get to see her enough, so that was good.
That's awesome. Yeah, we did a little birthday. Last Thursday was our oldest daughter, Olivia, her 13th birthday. Yeah. So pray for me if you're out there. But no, we actually we got some hibachi over at the Connie House in Woodstock because our place is shut down still.
I know.
We need to get like our Tuesdays have not been the same.
That's right. We if you don't know, the hibachi place in Hickory Flat is closed for a while.
Yeah, and it might be
it's messed us up with our schedule of.
I mean, honestly, we might have been the people keeping it open, but no, they're great people over there, good food, and it's messed with our rhythm because a few of us on staff go out quite regularly over there, so it's messed up our rhythm, and we need you back, Tommy. So get your act together. No play.
So rhythm. That's a good place to start. Believe it or not, because there is a rhythm to the church year. Now, I don't typically preach the lectionary, and so but we do recognize the big seasons, the big days that are in the church calendar, which is different.
For those who might not know lectionary, what's the lectionary?
Well, the lectionary is a way of organizing the scriptures. There's 4 per week, and so over a 3-year cycle, not every verse, but and so. It's just, and a lot of churches, and I have at times, use that as a starting place.
Right.
We have a Sunday school class that's lectionary based. And so, but within the church calendar, there are significant dates. Of course, we think of things like Ash Wednesday. We think of then Lent following that. We think of Easter. We think of Pentecost. These are days that we celebrate in Hickory Flat as well. And, of course, we're getting close to moving into the season of Advent, which precedes Christmas. But one of the important days in the church calendar that goes way, way back is All Saints' Day. They used to call it the Feast of All Saints. I think still some churches call it the Feast of All Saints. But it's a day in which traditionally we call the names of those saints that have passed on to glory from within our congregation, and also those that may be close, like family members and those sorts of things. We try to recognize those as well. Hickory Flat and where we are in our season of life, we don't have a whole lot of funerals.
Yeah.
We're blessed with that.
Take that, yeah.
We'll take that.
That's a good season to be in.
So I think we had about 4 people maybe 5 that were on the list.
That you read this year.
Yeah, that we read this year of actual church members who had passed away. But we had a much longer list, and there were many names called of people that were, relatives and close family members. And so, it's an important, it's a high, there's a sacred thing to it. There's a sadness to it, but there's also some joy to All Saints. And so, that is what we're celebrating and remembering yesterday. And, the sermon was a little bit different. It was a little bit shorter,
right?
Because the service itself that we do is a little lengthy and important. And so had beautiful music yesterday.
Beautiful music.
Yeah.
And it was good to see Steven up there, one of our newer members.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't joined yet, but but we're
newer attendees.
Newer attendees, but he's jumped right in and gotten involved with a lot of things. And but yeah, it was the first time he had sung a solo, and what a beautiful voice. So
that's awesome.
So
and that actually, speaking of like passing on, that song always reminds me back way long ago.
Yeah,
I was in youth group here, and we actually, like, right around when that song came out, we had a youth member pass away. It was a tragic accident. He fell off the back of a truck, and a locker fell on him. But so every time that song, it was just fitting that song played that day, because it kind of reminded me of him, and just, again, that cloud of witnesses that has kind of gone on. And I really think of, like, the word legacy and stuff like that when I think of All Saints, just as, like, thinking about all the people who have poured into this church that might not be with us anymore, 100%. But how, they were anchors at times that this church is standing on still. Some of their gifts, but also some of their just the hard work they put in, the committee meetings they sat in on, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of humbling when you think about the distance of it.
I think it's something that might be in the back of our minds all the time, and maybe even get mentioned from time to time, that we stand on the shoulders of others. But I do think All Saints is one of those days that there is this place where we realize, sitting in the sanctuary, that there are those that came before us, that we are now taking the baton from them. And so it kind of has our place in just sort of this sort of Christian history of our work that we are doing now, that later on someone else will do. And so, there's certainly that. I was having a conversation. One thing I thought was interesting yesterday, I don't know if you were online and saw some Facebook posts or tweets and stuff, that a lot of preachers were putting out stuff about All Saints yesterday, and just what a special service it was.
Yeah.
And it really is one of those important things. And I was having some conversations about it with some colleagues last week. And one of them was talking about, like, as we're getting older, I'm getting older, and he's my age, that, funerals and things like that get harder, I think, and even in the sense of me conducting a service like that, I can't help but think of the saints in my life, because I've lost both my parents now. I've lost a brother and a sister now. Lost some other close friends and relatives, and thinking about this, All Saints, there is a sense of sadness that's there, and longing and to see them again, and remembering the relationships that we had. And so I know that emotions are sort of it's a safe place and a sacred place to have those emotions, I think, in church, and I think that's part of the importance.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that is the specialness of All Saints is, you kind of feel these things all year round, but you kind of feel these things as grief hits in different places at different times. But during the service, it almost turns it into a very holy moment.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, almost like I know here, and we kind of ring the bell, and it always kind of feels like it's like, okay, like ringing them kind of into heaven. And and not that they haven't been there before, but you know what I mean? Like, just in my head, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess, like, personally, it's kind of like, that's how I kind of have always kind of just viewed it. And I will admit, there have been times in my life where I'm like, oh, man, All Saints, it's just going to be a sad Sunday, you know what I mean? But I think, again, the more I think about it, and the more I really look at it, it's like, what just a blessing the people who have gone on before have been to people, you know what I mean? And just reframing it into that, like, reminder of, I love how some people, instead of funeral, they'll say, like, a celebration of life, you know what I mean? And it's just a change of words, but it kind of changes the perspective as well. And that's what I like to think about as I remember the people who I've lost in my life, is just what in their life either taught me something, reminded me of something, brought me joy and stuff like that, and trying to remember those times with those people.
Yeah, I think a word that comes to my mind is profound.
Mm-hmm.
There's something profound in All Saints.
Yeah.
And that sacredness is set aside for that. And there really is something about the ringing of the bell and hearing it, and then it kind of dies down, and then we hear the next one. And that is very holy.
Yeah.
In those moments. Where I started was talking about some of the celebrity deaths that we have. And I have to say that your wife was a part of the catalyst for that.
I'm not going to lie. I guess you sent the email out several months ago.
Well,
it's September, maybe mid-September.
Yes. Yeah. A couple of months ago.
We were driving to the beach. That's all I remember. And she was reading her email and she's like, oh, they're taking submissions for All Saints. And she immediately was like, I'm putting Bob Barker in there. I was like, babe, don't put Bob Barker in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But she's like, he'll get a kick out of it. He'll enjoy it. He'll have a good laugh about it.
Yeah. But it was that when she did that, it did make me smile. But then, I think since Bob Barker passed away, and that was right when Bob Barker had passed away. I think Jimmy Buffett passed away, and then Matthew Perry, and there have been other celebrities.
Yeah.
And part of my, mentioning it was starting there with the sermon is that these celebrity deaths that we hear about, they do make us sad because those people had a part in our lives, whether just, coming into the TV set or listening to their music or whatever. There is a sadness about that, but it is a sadness that in a grief that we get to acceptance to pretty fast. I use the word news cycle.
Sure.
Everybody's talking about last week about Matthew Perry.
Yeah.
But in a week or two, we would have moved on to what else. But the thing about grief when it's personal, like it was in that room on Sunday in our sanctuary, is there were some very personal things and people who had lost folks within the past year, but also remembering those they're still grieving from 4 or 5, 10 years ago, because there isn't there isn't this news, news cycle with grief.
Yeah.
And so making a space for that, I think was an important thing to do. And, I use the example of hearing Princess Diana's funeral. You were probably too young then.
I remember it. I don't remember specifics of it.
Yeah, and it was, it was a incredible service. It was the center of the world then. So all eyes were tuned to the TV set, and you had like the Archbishop of Canterbury, you had Elton John singing, and then you had her brother speak.
Yeah.
And her, it was so emotional, to hear, because he knew her. He had this different kind of relationship with them. And I think at least, even as we recognize that All Saints, and we'll get to this in just a second, really kind of expands to all the saints, from all time, from all corners of the world, including us. But yet there is this driving it down to this very personal level that we grieve the people that we've lost.
Yeah.
And pray for them, and and they for us too.
For sure.
Great
I seem to have to pick on you a little bit, Dave. Yesterday you were talking about Bob Barker, and you were like, wait, was he on Deal or Let's Make a Deal or Price is Right? And I just happened to look up at the screen, and the picture you chose for Bob Barker literally had the Price is Right.
Well, it was interesting.
It just made me laugh.
Because the entire congregation said in unison, the Price is Right.
We're like, come on, Dave.
I don't know. Those two shows are sort of interchangeable because they were the two big game shows
and they were like right at the same time. So if you were sick during the day or whatever, you would watch those back to back. I get what you're saying, but it was just funny because I looked up at the picture and I was like, it's right there.
Yeah, and I should have been more attentive.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. But, in that service, also, one thing about All Saints is that it usually, because it's November 1st, usually falls on the first Sunday of the month. Occasionally I think October 31st might be on a Sunday and we might go ahead and do All Saints on that day. But most of the time it's on the first Sunday, which is also a day of Holy Communion. And my wife was saying to me, and I think I felt it, I don't know if I would ask you if you felt it, that it made communion much more holy. something about the service and the remembrance of it made, that sort of sacred moment that we have each month when we have Holy Communion even more special to us.
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was less a part of a service and it felt more like a holy moment, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because it was, you kind of intertwined it really well, where you kind of read part of from the
liturgy.
And like then did the announcing of the names, and then the community. Like it was well interwoven, I thought.
Yeah. Because it has those lines about, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses.
Yeah.
And so that's when we get to it in the All Saints Communion service that we had. But I just think also some of the other things that we had talked about in the sermon and that led up to that, the whole mystery of faith. Christ has died. Christ has risen. Christ will come again. Having had that song, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And this mystery of faith that we have, because we really don't know what the great beyond is going to be like. We don't know, heaven. There are some things in Scripture, but then they were using description with human words the best that they could
trying to describe what they saw.
To describe something that's unimaginable for us.
Yeah.
But even just the whole idea of time and space, and so we live in this linear. We're just bound by that.
Yeah.
And so trying to imagine eternity and stepping into eternity, I think I think there are those moments that it's good to sort of let the mystery sort of wash over us, and just like I think it's there. I think you've probably heard the term Kairos time and Chronos time.
Yep.
Chronos time is what we're on now, chronological kind of time. But entering into the Kairos time, it is that sort of holy space that is really without seconds and minutes and, years and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, All Saints is, it's becoming one of my, to say favorite almost sounds sacrilegious, that it's a favorite, but it is something that I look forward to, and it's growing in importance to me.
Sure. I think you kind of come to respect it, and I think as you were saying, that funerals have become even harder because it almost kind of makes you consider the people who have gone on before, and really probably even your own life at some level. You know what I mean? Like it just, I don't know. I think it just adds a little more meaning to it.
Well, me, in sort of the creative streak I have, I don't like repeating things a lot.
Yeah.
I try to do things in new ways.
Yeah.
And it's reminding me that there are some things and some spaces that we need to do in the traditional way.
Yeah.
And to lean back in that, because it gives us grounding, I think, of where we are. And so, I think I mentioned in the sermon, I almost always in doing a funeral use the Book of Worship words. That dying, Christ destroyed our death. Rising, Christ restored our life. Christ will come again in glory. Those are things we need to hold on to. And so the fact that the words are familiar, I used to think just because they were familiar that sometimes people would stop listening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes with the Apostles' Creed, I fear that they were just kind of saying this thing and not really taking in the words. But I do think even in that, it's forming us.
Yeah.
I'm reminded when I've gone to visit nursing homes, maybe in a memory care unit, and visiting with patients there that, may be suffering from real extreme Alzheimer's. And it's like they don't know hardly the names of their children. And yet, when you start reciting things like the 23rd Psalm, like the Lord's Prayer, something kicks in that's sort of like focused into their DNA. And so
it's very rhythmic. And I noticed that a lot, especially during like the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
When somebody feels like they're a little bit off of a normal cadence of it.
Yeah.
It feels very stark and contrast. You're like, wait, what's happening? It's like if you hear a song done totally different, you're like,
yeah, what's going on here?
What's going on? Like something I can hear something's off or whatever. Yeah. But I think that's such a beautiful thing because I think the rhythm almost cements it a little more to us.
Yeah.
And I think we, there's definitely spaces to where probably we could come back and say like, hey, here's what the Apostles' Creed means, and you do that, you know what I'm saying? But like, I think also being able to just recite it, you know, I don't even look at the screen, you know, I mean, it's just, I know it, but sometimes it's, I don't know,
it's just,
if you're so familiar with
it almost gets on like a cellular basis for us.
Yeah.
And, you know, and, you know, we started off talking about rhythm here, and the rhythm of the church year with, you know, the church calendar and All Saints coming around at this time. And the fact that it comes right before we get to the end of the Christian calendar, which is Christ the King Sunday, which, you know, we celebrate right around Thanksgiving. And then, you know, some things that are in our, you know, in our calendar as well, you know, with Thanksgiving and Christmas, but having Advent sort of remind us and get us in the rhythm of us preparing for Christ. And, you know, later on we have Epiphany and Lent and Easter and all those things. I do think it grounds us. They come around every year, and just like, you know, we just had the time change and we're now deeply into fall and winter's coming, and the seasons of life, you know, I think it reminds us not only of our own mortality, but somehow it connects us with the spiritual in a sense. So, yeah, that's all Saints. So that was.
Can I ask you one question that it's just been sitting with me since the beginning? And I've never heard of All Saints mentioned as the Feast of All Saints. Is there a story behind, like, did they used to do like a meal and stuff together with it, or?
You know, I think the feast days that they would have, I think, I mean, I think it was just, I think it's a way of celebration, but I mean, I'm sure there was a meal involved some way it's in church.
Well, just
I think it's just the high holy days were feast days.
Okay.
You know, and so, and, you know, in the Jewish tradition, there were the feast days where they would come, whether it was Hanukkah or Rosh Hashanah or something like that. Yeah. Those were feast days where they would travel to Jerusalem and go back to their holy city, and it would be almost like a family reunion, but they're also acknowledging something sacred in their life. And in each one of those, you know, whether it was the New Year or the Day of Atonement or whatever, had great significance. Right. So I think it goes back to that.
Interesting.
But, you know, I think it's just another way, a kind of a archaic way of saying this is something that's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't know if you've got more to say about All Saints, but I did happen to notice something as I was looking back at some of our old podcast. Did you know that we're on number 86?
86.
This will be 86.
We're gonna have to do something on 100.
I was about to say we're really good.
We don't need to let that pass. Yeah, we don't need to let that pass. You know, I just had got here.
Yeah.
And
we started pretty quick.
Well, yeah, but in like doing some research about the church and stuff for some other things I had to do, I stumbled across some church history and realized that we moved into this church in 2022, and I think it was this year when I was. So we should have celebrated that last year.
Yeah,
I thought that. But we are coming up on a anniversary of the whole church. I mean, when Hickory Flat was down the street where the library is now. And so, you know, we need to celebrate those things when we get that. So we will celebrate the other thing when we get to it.
And more celebrations to come.
More celebrations to come, for sure. So we got a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving here, but this Sunday, just to give you a little preview of that, I'm doing a sermon called Trending, and maybe I'll say the surprise for what that's really about. But it's really talking about prioritizing our life. Okay. You know, on Twitter, things that trend are the most popular news stories trending. And so oftentimes when I go on Twitter or X or whatever they call it now, I'll look and see what's trending, you know, and sometimes it's really silly stuff.
Sure.
And so, you know, it's sort of like looking at our lives. What do we really prioritize? What are the things that are trending in our lives? Yeah. And, you know, are they sort of superficial things? Are they truly the important things in our lives? So that's where we're headed this Sunday. So, yeah.
Well, as we're here to wrap up, again, thank you guys so much for watching. You know where to find us if you got any questions or comments about anything we've talked about. Dave, anything else to add?
No. Everybody have a great week. Hope to see you on Sunday. God bless.
All right. God bless, guys. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.